He's just someone I talk to. Why are you acting crazy? She said while smiling at her phone. I said nothing, just took a screenshot, sent it to myself, and walked away that night. The truth came out when her friend tagged her publicly. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. He's just someone I talk to. She said it without even looking up from her phone. Still smiling. Still glowing at whatever was on that screen. And me? I was standing right there, 3 feet away, asking a simple question. Not even an accusation. Just a question. And that smile, that particular smile she was wearing, that was the thing that broke something inside me. Not the answer. The smile. Because she wasn't smiling like that at me anymore. She hadn't smiled like that at me in a very long time. I'm 31. She's 29. We'd been together for 4 years. Living together for 2. That's all the background you need to understand what happened next. I didn't yell. I didn't grab the phone. I didn't do any of the things you'd expect a man to do when he's standing in his own kitchen watching his girlfriend light up for someone else's message. I pulled out my own phone. Quietly. Opened the camera. And I took a screenshot, not of her phone, but of the moment, of what I was feeling. I typed it into my notes app. She smiled. I asked. She said he's just someone I talk to. Still smiling. 11:48 p.m. Tuesday. Sent it to my own email address. Then I walked to the bedroom, closed the door behind me, lay down on my side of the bed, and I stared at the ceiling for about 2 hours, thinking about how I'd gotten here. Her name was Claire, and once upon a time, before any of this started, she was the most straightforward person I'd ever met. That's what I loved about her. No games. No hidden angles. She said what she meant what she said, and if something bothered her, you'd know within the hour. That directness was magnetic. At least, it had been. Because somewhere in the last 8 or 9 months, that directness had started pointing somewhere else. And everything she used to say to me, she was saying to her phone. It started small, like it always does. A notification here. A laugh there. The kind of laugh you don't explain because it came from your phone, not from the room you're actually in. I noticed it the way you notice a slight change in temperature. You don't panic. You just think, that's odd. The first time I actually clocked her phone behavior was back in February. We'd gone out for dinner. Nice place. Her idea, actually. She'd been in a great mood all week, which had made me happy because the weeks before that had been rough. She'd seemed distant, a little flat, like she was somewhere else in her head. But that Friday she was bright again. Energetic. Laughing easily. And I thought, there she is. There's my girl. We sat down, ordered drinks, started talking. And then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. And that brightness shifted slightly. Like she was trying not to react, but couldn't fully stop herself. She put the phone face down, looked back at me, smiled. Sorry, where were we? And I let it go. Because I was happy she was happy. I wasn't going to ruin a good night over a notification. That was February. By March, the phone was face down more often than not. By April, she'd started sleeping with it on her side of the bed instead of the nightstand. Not a big deal, right? That's what I kept telling myself. Not a big deal. Her friend group was large and loosely connected. She had people from college, people from her old job, people she'd met through hobbies, people who were friends of friends. It was hard to keep track. I'd never tried to. That wasn't the relationship we had. I trusted her, she trusted me, and we didn't do the invasive "who's that" thing. So when she mentioned a name in passing, a guy from an online group she was part of, something to do with graphic design, I didn't react. She didn't linger on it. It was a 3-second mention. Oh, Tyler was saying the same thing. It's a whole debate in the design community. That was it. Tyler. Gone as fast as he came. I didn't ask follow-up questions. I didn't Google him. I just filed it away in the back of my head the way you file a grocery receipt. Something you don't need until you do. April turned into May. May turned into June. And June is when things started to feel actually wrong. Not suspicious wrong. Off wrong. Like the furniture in your house had been moved an inch in every direction. Everything was still there. Nothing was obviously different. But you kept bumping into things. She started going to bed later. Not consistently, just occasionally. I'd wake up at 2 in the morning and she wouldn't be next to me. I'd find her in the living room, phone in hand, lamp on low. Couldn't sleep, she'd say. Scrolling. And she'd put the phone down and come back to bed and everything would feel fine. But it happened 4 times in 6 weeks. Maybe 5. And you can call a thing a coincidence once. Maybe twice. 5 times starts to feel like a pattern you're choosing not to see. In early July, I brought it up. Not dramatically. I wasn't even planning to say anything. It just came out over breakfast. Hey, are you doing okay? You seem a little somewhere else lately. She looked up from her coffee. What do you mean? Just, I don't know. You've been up late a lot. You seem distracted. She tilted her head. Gentle expression. A little confused. I'm fine. Work's just been kind of mentally exhausting. I zone out on my phone because my brain is tired. You do the same thing. And she was right. I'd do the same thing. So I nodded. Said, yeah, okay. Just checking. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm good. Promise. I believed her. I really did. 3 days later, I saw the name again. Tyler. She was texting at the kitchen counter, and I walked past behind her, not snooping, just walking, and I caught it for half a second. Tyler. Okay, but hear me out. She turned the phone face down before I could read anything else. Not dramatically, just casually. The way you might if you were texting a friend about a birthday surprise for the person standing next to you. Totally normal movement. Except she didn't mention it. Didn't say, oh, Tyler's trying to convince me of something, this guy I know. She just smiled at me and said, do we have any olive oil left? I checked the cabinet. We did. And the name sat in my head like a splinter. Small. Invisible. Just slightly painful. I want to be honest about something. I'm not a jealous person by nature. I've had relationships before where jealousy was the engine driving everything. And it's exhausting and corrosive, and I'd watched it destroy good things. I didn't want to be that guy. I actively chose not to be that guy. So every time the thought surfaced, Tyler, who is Tyler? Why is she flipping her phone over? I pushed it back down. Because I didn't want to accuse someone without evidence. I didn't want to make her feel surveilled in her own relationship. I didn't want to be the partner who made her feel like she needed permission to have friends. So I sat with it, quietly, and I watched. Mid-July, we were watching a movie on a Friday night. Blanket, couch, takeout containers on the coffee table. The kind of evening that used to feel like everything. 20 minutes in, she laughed. But the movie wasn't funny. I looked over. She was looking at her phone. And she was glowing. That's the only word for it. Glowing. The way people look when they're reading something that delights them in a very specific, personal way. Not a meme. Not a group chat joke. Something directed at her. Something meant for her alone. I watched her type a response. Fast. Still smiling. Then she put the phone on her chest and turned back to the movie like nothing had happened. What did I miss? She said. And I told her. And we finished the movie. And I said nothing. But that splinter had gone a little deeper. August. Work was rough for me. I had a project going sideways, and I was bringing stress home that I wasn't managing well. We had a couple of arguments, small ones, over stupid things. The dishes. The thermostat. Who forgot to reschedule the car service appointment? Classic low-stakes fights that are really about high-stakes feelings. And during all of that, during every one of those arguments, I noticed something. She'd end the fight. Not by resolving it. By going quiet. She'd get short, stop engaging, say something like, I don't have energy for this right now, and go to another room. And within 10 minutes, she'd be back, lighter, like something had reset. And I realized, after the third time, that she was going to her phone. Not to calm down. To talk to someone. I don't know how I knew. I just knew. September 3rd. A Tuesday night. I remember because I'd had an early morning the next day, and I'd gone to bed at 10. She'd stayed up. I woke up at midnight to get water, and as I passed through the living room, I heard her laughing. Softly. The kind of laugh you muffle because you know someone else is asleep. She saw me, and the laugh cut off. Hey, she said. Sorry, did I wake you? No. Just getting water. Who are you talking to? A beat. Just a friend. From the design group. Not even a name. Just a friend. From the design group. Okay, I said. Went back to bed. Lay there. Didn't sleep until 2:30. I went back and forth in my head for the next week. Part of me wanted to sit her down and say, I need to talk to you about something, and I need you to be straight with me. Part of me was terrified of what straight would look like. Part of me thought, you're spiraling over someone talking to a friend. You're being exactly the person you didn't want to be. And part of me thought, you're not spiraling. You're pattern matching. And the pattern is real. I kept landing in the same place. If I asked and I was wrong, I'd damage what we had for no reason. If I asked and I was right, I'd have to deal with whatever right looked like. Both outcomes felt like loss. So I waited. September 14th. That night. The one I started with. We'd eaten dinner. She'd been in a good mood. That specific kind of good mood she'd been in lately that felt like it had nothing to do with me. She was on her phone at the kitchen counter while I cleaned up. And I just asked. Casually. Non-aggressively. Hey, who's been keeping you so entertained lately? She looked up, tilted her head. What? Your phone. You've been on it a lot. Just curious who you've been talking to. She smiled. Not at me. At the phone. Still reading whatever was on the screen. Tyler. From the design group. He's just someone I talk to. Why are you acting crazy? Why are you acting crazy? Not. I get why you're asking. Let me explain. Not. Oh. I should have mentioned him more. He's just this guy from my online group. Totally normal. Here, let me show you. Just. Why are you acting crazy? With a smile. A smile that wasn't for me. And I felt something in my chest go very, very still. I didn't say anything. I pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, typed exactly what she said. The time, the date, her expression, that she was smiling at the phone when she said it. Sent it to my email. Put my phone back in my pocket. She didn't notice. She was already looking back at her screen. I'm going to bed, I said. Already? It's only 10. Yeah, early morning. I kissed the top of her head. She tilted into it the way you do when it's habit. And I walked to the bedroom. And I lay down. And I thought about the word crazy. Because that's a very specific word to reach for. That's not the word you use when someone asks an innocent question. That's the word you use when you want to make someone doubt their own perception. That's the word that makes the question the problem instead of the answer. I'd heard it before, in a different relationship, years ago. I knew what it was built to do. Over the next few days I was quieter than usual. Not sulking. Not punishing. Just observing. I wanted to understand the full shape of what I was looking at before I decided what to do with it. And what I saw, when I was really paying attention, was a portrait of someone who was in two places at once. She was physically with me, emotionally somewhere else. When we talked, she engaged, but with a layer of something between us. A film, like she was here, but also waiting to be somewhere else. When her phone buzzed, she came alive in a way she didn't when I walked into the room. And when I tried to close the distance between us, just reach for her hand, or suggest we do something together, she was warm but vague. Sure, maybe this weekend. Yeah, we should do that. Not yes, not no. Just the soft brush off of someone who's already mentally committed somewhere else. I called my friend Ben one evening from my car in the parking lot at work. Ben's been my friend since college. He's the kind of guy who doesn't waste your time or his. I think she's emotionally checked out, I said. Silence on his end for a second. With someone else or just checked out? I don't know. Maybe both. Another silence. Have you confronted her? I asked her about the guy she talks to. She called me crazy. Ben made a sound. Low and knowing. That's not a good answer to that question, he said. No, I agreed. It's not. What are you going to do? I looked out the windshield at nothing. I'm going to wait a little longer. I need to know what I'm actually dealing with before I blow everything up. Fair, he said. But don't wait so long that you're the last one to know. That advice stuck with me. Don't wait so long that you're the last one to know. Because there's a specific kind of humiliation that comes with being the last one to know. And I'd been close to that position before. In the relationship years ago, with the girl who used the word crazy the way a magician uses a handkerchief to redirect attention. I had learned things from that. I had paid for those lessons. I wasn't going to ignore them now just because I loved her. Late September, she mentioned Tyler in conversation for the first time in weeks. Almost casually. We were talking about a design project she was doing for a client, and she said, Tyler had a good point about the color palette, actually. I kept my face neutral. Oh yeah? What did he say? That high contrast doesn't always mean high impact. Sometimes it's just noise. That's smart. He's really good at that. Seeing the thing behind the thing. She said it with this quality in her voice. Appreciation. Real appreciation. The kind that lives in your chest before it becomes something more. How long have you known him? I asked. Oh, I don't know. Maybe a year? We're in this online community together. He's kind of become a go-to for feedback. Have you met him? No. He's in Portland. She said it quickly. Maybe too quickly. Like she'd anticipated the question. Cool, I said. And I filed that away too. October 4th. She had a girls' night with a few friends from college, Amber and her roommate Priya. They were going to dinner and then to some gallery thing downtown. I was genuinely happy for her. She needed time with people who weren't me. We both did. She left at 7, looking beautiful, in a good mood. I ordered food, watched something, and was in bed by 10:30. She got home around midnight. I heard her come in, heard the bathroom, felt her slide into bed. Fine. Normal. But around 2 I woke up. The space beside me was empty. I lay there for a moment, just listening. Quiet in the apartment. Then, very faint from the living room. Light. Not sound. Just the faint glow of a screen. I don't know why I did what I did next. I never do things like this. But something pulled at me. I picked up my phone from the nightstand and opened her Find My Friend's location, something we'd shared mutually when she'd been nervous about walking to her car alone one night, and we'd never turned off. She was at the apartment. Obviously, I could hear her in the living room. But beneath the location was her recent activity log, and I noticed something I hadn't before. Her location had pinged from a coffee shop downtown at 9:47 p.m., which was fine. They'd probably stopped somewhere after dinner. But then it pinged from an address I didn't recognize at 10:23 p.m. for about 40 minutes, before pinging back to downtown. And then home. I stared at that address for a long time. I didn't look it up that night. I put the phone down. I went back to sleep. Or tried to. The next morning I looked up the address. It was a bar. A fairly well-reviewed cocktail bar about 2 miles from the restaurant she'd gone to for dinner. Nothing scandalous about a bar. People go to bars. But she hadn't mentioned going to a bar. She'd said dinner and then the gallery. She'd come home smelling like red wine and perfume and something I couldn't name. I thought about asking. Then I thought about the word crazy. And I decided not to. Not yet. 2 weeks passed. Normal life. Work, errands, dinners together, weekends. She was warm with me. Attentive, even. It almost made me feel like I'd been manufacturing all of it. Maybe I'd been. Maybe Ben was wrong. Maybe I was the problem. I started to sink into that doubt a little. The dangerous kind of doubt that makes you feel like the villain in your own story. And then October 21st happened. I was at work, eating lunch at my desk, scrolling through Instagram the way you do when your brain needs a 10-minute vacation. And I saw something. In my feed. A photo. A guy I didn't follow. But someone I did follow had liked it, so it surfaced. The guy's name was Tyler Wren, and the photo was a selfie. Him. And Claire. At what was very clearly a bar. Smiling. His arm loose around her shoulders. Her face tipped slightly toward him. The caption said, "Always great when work friends become real ones." At Clairdevox. Posted October 4th. 10:31 p.m. I sat very still for approximately 30 seconds. Then I screenshotted it. Sent it to my email. Added it to the folder I'd been quietly building since September 14th. And I finished my lunch. I want to stop here and explain something about how I was feeling, because it's important. I wasn't destroyed. Not yet. I was in a state that I can only describe as crystalline. Like everything had suddenly become very clear and very sharp. There was no fog of doubt anymore. He was in Portland, she'd said. Tyler was in Portland. But October 4th, at 10:31 p.m., Tyler was in a bar 2 miles from the restaurant where Claire had gone to dinner with her friends. Which meant either Tyler wasn't in Portland, or he'd come here, or she'd gone there recently, and I didn't know about it. None of those options landed softly. I didn't say anything that night, or the next night. I needed to understand what I was going to do with this before I opened my mouth. Because once you say it, you can't unsay it. And once she knows you know, the whole dynamic shifts. She'd have time to construct a response, to contextualize, to spin. I didn't want to give her the spin opportunity. I wanted the truth. And truth, I had learned, comes out when people don't know they're being watched for it. So I went quiet. And I watched. October 24th. 3 days after I found the photo. We were having dinner at home. She'd cooked pasta, which she made really well. Candles on the table because she liked them. Music from the kitchen speaker. It felt like one of our better evenings in months. And I hated that. I hated that I was sitting across from her feeling the warmth of a good evening while carrying that screenshot in my back pocket like a stone. She was talking about a client who was being difficult. Something about feedback that contradicted itself. Did Tyler have any thoughts on it? I asked. Lightly. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. She glanced up. No, I didn't really ask him about this one. Oh, I thought he was your go-to for feedback. For personal projects, yeah? This is more of a client thing. Right. I twirled some pasta. Does he come to the city often? A pause. Not long. Half a second. But I felt it. I mean, he's in Portland. Not really a quick trip. Same answer. Portland. He's in Portland. I looked at her across the candlelight. Right, I said again. And she looked back at me. And for just a moment, I thought I saw something shift behind her eyes. A flicker. But it closed fast. She smiled. This pasta turned out really good, right? It did, I said. And we finished dinner. I went to bed that night and wrote in my notes app for 40 minutes. Not notes for any plan. Just to get it out of my chest. She's still saying Portland. The photo was posted October 4th with location metadata from downtown here. She was at a bar I found on Find My. She tagged her in the photo. She didn't mention meeting him. She told me he was just someone she talked to. She called me crazy for asking. She's been glowing at her phone for 8 months. And I've been sitting here telling myself I'm the problem. I read it back. And then I knew. This wasn't uncertainty anymore. This wasn't me being paranoid or insecure or crazy. This was a person I loved choosing someone else in slow motion and calling me crazy so I wouldn't notice. I didn't sleep much that night. I thought about everything. Not just the recent months, everything. The full 4 years. And I started to see it differently. The first year had been real. I was certain of that. The connection, the chemistry, the building of something that had been genuine. But sometime around the 18-month mark, she'd started to flatten. I'd attributed it to stress, career transition, adjustment. We'd had a rough patch and come through it. Or so I thought. But now I wondered, had we actually come through it? Or had she just found a way to manage her dissatisfaction externally instead of addressing it with me? And was Tyler the managing, or was Tyler the replacement? I didn't know, but I knew the difference mattered. November 1st. I came home from work and she was on a video call, which wasn't unusual. She worked from home and had client calls regularly. But when I walked in and she heard the door, she ended the call fast. Too fast. Hey, she said. You're early. 15 minutes. Right, yeah? Long day. She was cheerful, a little bright. The specific brightness she had right after spending time, even virtual time, in a good mood with someone she liked. I recognized it now. I'd cataloged it. Who was that? I asked. Client. About the rebrand. Which client? The smallest pause. Hendrix Company. The packaging company. She said it the way people say things they've prepared. Smooth. Just the right amount of detail. Not too vague, not too much. I nodded. Okay. What do you want for dinner? She exhaled. Whatever you're feeling. I could do takeout. Sure, I said. And I went to the bedroom and I closed the door and I sat on the edge of the bed for a few minutes. And I made a decision. Not to blow it all up immediately. Not to confront her in anger. Not to do anything that would let her take control of the narrative. I decided to simply be done. Quietly. Internally. I would not put my heart in that room anymore. I would be kind. I would be present in the surface sense. And I would handle what needed to be handled when the moment was right. Because I'd seen what blowing it up in the wrong moment looked like. You hand someone the power to make you the villain. You give them the chaos to hide inside of. I wasn't going to do that. Over the next 10 days, I was calm. Exceptionally calm. The kind of calm you can only achieve when you've already done your grieving in private. She noticed. You seem different, she said one evening. Different how? Just quieter. I'm fine. Just tired. She studied me for a moment. Something crossed her face. Not guilt exactly, but awareness. Like she could sense a shift in atmospheric pressure that she couldn't quite locate the source of. You sure? Yeah, I said. Promise. She accepted it. Which told me something too. A person with nothing to hide would have pressed. Would have said, you don't seem okay. Talk to me. She accepted it. Because pressing would have opened a door she wasn't ready to walk through. November 12th. A Wednesday. I was at work when I got a notification. Not from a person. From Instagram. Someone had mentioned me in a comment. That was strange, because I didn't post often and nobody really tagged me in things. I opened the app. And there it was. Tyler Wren had posted a new photo. A coffee shop shot. Him smiling, looking at someone off camera. Natural, candid. The kind of photo that's staged to look unstaged. And in the caption, some chapters start in unexpected places. Grateful for this one. More soon. 14 comments. And in the 11th comment, someone had replied to someone else asking who the photo was about. And that someone else, a mutual acquaintance, apparently, had tagged Claire's Instagram handle with a winking face emoji, which meant Instagram's algorithm had pulled it into my feed as a suggested notification because Claire and I were linked on the platform. The internet connected the dots for me before anyone intended it to. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 25 minutes, just breathing. I looked at the photo for a long time. I read the caption again. Some chapters start in unexpected places. Grateful for this one. More soon. He wasn't in Portland. He hadn't been in Portland for a while, probably. He was here, in this city. And Claire knew. And she'd been lying about it. Not lying by saying an untruth once. Lying by construction. By omission. By choosing the word Portland every single time I'd been fool enough to bring it up. As a way of reassuring me that distance made the thing safe. There was no distance. There never had been. And the more soon at the end of that caption meant something. Something was moving. Something was already moved. I drove home in complete silence. No music. No podcast. Just the sound of the road in the city and my own breathing. And by the time I pulled into the parking spot below our building, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Not out of rage. Not out of revenge. Out of clarity. She was in the kitchen when I walked in, cooking something. She looked up and smiled. The normal smile. The one she reserved for me when things felt comfortable. Hey, she said. Good day. Yeah. Decent. You. Pretty good. I got that Hendrix revision approved, so that was a relief. Good, I said. I put my bag down, poured a glass of water, stood at the counter, and then I said, Tyler posted a photo today. The spoon she was stirring with slowed. Just slightly. Half a degree slower. Oh yeah. Casual. Light. Yeah. Nice shot. Said something about a new chapter. He's here, isn't he? Not a question. She turned the burner down. Slowly turned to face me. Her face was doing something complicated. Not guilt. She was past guilt. More like calculation. Like she was deciding in real time how much to give. What? Tyler. He's not in Portland. He's here. He's been here. She looked at me for a moment. Then she looked away. He relocated a few months ago. And you didn't mention it. It didn't seem important. You told me he was in Portland. I said he was from Portland. I let that sit. Because that's the move, isn't it? From Portland. Not in Portland. Small words. Big architecture. Claire, I said quietly. She looked at me. What is this? And for the first time in a long time, maybe the first time in all of it, she didn't have a quick answer. She looked at the stovetop. At the counter. At the wall behind me. It's complicated, she finally said. Then uncomplicated. Silence. Long silence. What came out over the next hour wasn't a confession like you see in movies. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a door slamming or a vase breaking or anyone raising their voice. It was quieter than that. Sadder than that. She talked slowly, haltingly, like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a very long time and was finally, reluctantly, putting it down. She'd met Tyler in the design community online about 14 months ago. It had started as professional conversation. He was smart, she said. He understood her work in a way she hadn't felt understood in a long time. I let that pass without reacting. The conversations had gotten personal. Gradually. She hadn't planned it. He'd relocated to the city 4 months ago. Not because of her, she said, though she said it carefully, like she wasn't entirely sure, and they'd started meeting occasionally. Just coffee at first. Just talking. The night of October 4th, the gallery night, she'd gone to meet him. At that bar. She said nothing physical had happened. She looked at me when she said it. I looked back, and I believed her. But I also knew that nothing physical was the smallest possible defense at that point. Because what she'd built with him, whatever it was, wasn't physical yet. It was worse. It was the wanting. It was the choosing. It was the every night phone glow and the middle of the night giggles and the smile she wore for his texts and the lie about Portland and the word crazy she'd used to make me doubt my own eyes. That was the affair. The actual betrayal. The rest was just geography. Do you love him? I asked. She closed her eyes. Open them. I don't know. Do you love me? A longer pause. Yes. But I don't know where we've been. I don't know if we're who we were. You could have told me that, I said. At any point. You could have said, I feel disconnected. I feel like something's missing. I'm struggling with us. She looked at the table. I know. Instead you said I was acting crazy. She flinched. A real flinch. I know, she said again. That's the part one can't move past, I said. And I realized as I said it that it was true. Not the Tyler. Not the bar. Not even the lies about Portland. The word crazy. The smile she wore when she said it. The intentional dismantling of my perception of reality. That was the line. We didn't scream. We didn't break things. I didn't call her names, and she didn't perform more explanations. We just sat in the wreckage of a conversation that had been 4 years in the making and breathed through it. Eventually she asked, what do we do now? And I said, I'm going to go stay with Ben for a while. She didn't argue. Maybe because she knew she didn't have the right to. Maybe because some part of her had known this was coming. Maybe because more soon wasn't a caption about a chapter ending. I don't know. I packed a bag that night. Not the dramatic full suitcase kind. Just enough for a week. She sat on the couch and watched me from across the apartment. When I was done, I picked up the bag. She said, I'm sorry. I believed that too. I believed she was sorry. I just didn't think sorry was enough to rebuild what she'd carefully taken apart over 8 months. I know, I said. And I left. I stayed with Ben for 2 weeks. He didn't ask too many questions. He let me exist in his spare room and process it at whatever speed I needed to. Some nights I was okay. Some nights I lay there in the dark and felt something that wasn't quite sadness and wasn't quite anger, more like mourning. Not just for her. For the version of us I thought we'd been. For all the moments I'd spent wondering if I was crazy while she was building something else in the background. There's a particular grief in realizing that you were right all along, that your instincts were accurate from the beginning, that the problem wasn't your perception, it was someone else's narrative management. You lose two things at once: the person and the trust you had in yourself. I went back to the apartment once, about 10 days later, to pick up more of my things. She was there. We were civil. It wasn't comfortable, but it was human. She'd been talking to someone, she said. A therapist. I told her I thought that was a good idea. I meant it. Tyler's name didn't come up. I didn't ask. It wasn't mine to ask anymore. The legal stuff, the lease, the shared things, the practical untangling of two lives that had been folded together, took about 6 weeks. We divided it fairly. No fights over furniture. No bitter texts at 2 in the morning. We'd been together for years. We owed each other a decent ending. At least I thought so. 3 months later, I was fully in my own place. Small, quieter than what I was used to, but mine. Ben helped me move in. We ordered pizza on the floor of the empty apartment and talked for hours. Are you okay? He asked at one point. I thought about it. Getting there, I said. That's enough, he said. And it was. The Tyler thing resolved itself the way these things usually do. Not with drama. With reality. I heard through a mutual acquaintance a few months later that Claire and Tyler had tried to make something real of it. Lasted about 2 months. She'd reached out to me once around that time. Just a text. Not asking to get back together. Not explaining. Just, I hope you're doing well. I'm sorry for how I handled everything. I read it 3 times. Then I put the phone down. I thought about how to respond for a few days. And then I wrote back. Thank you. Take care of yourself. And that was it. The last exchange we had. There's something I want to say about the screenshot habit. The note in my app from September 14th. The folder I built. Some people might call that calculating. Cold. Like I was building a case instead of just being in a relationship. But here's the thing. I wasn't building a case. I was building a record. For myself. Because when someone looks at you and tells you you're acting crazy while they're smiling at the evidence of what they're doing, you need something to hold on to. You need to be able to go back and read your own words and see, no, you saw this. Your eyes were right. Your gut was right. You weren't crazy. That's not surveillance. That's self-preservation. That's the quiet act of someone who knows how easy it is to be gaslit by someone you love and has decided, this time, not to fully surrender to it. There's also something I want to say about what I learned. Not in a preachy way. Not, here's the moral of the story. Just what landed in me after all of it. The first thing is this. Disconnection is real, and it happens, and people drift in relationships, and that's not always anyone's fault. But disconnection plus deception is a choice. If you're unhappy, you can say so. If you're falling for someone else, you can be honest. It will be painful. It will be hard. But it is the only version of this story that doesn't require someone to call you crazy for trusting their own eyes. The second thing is, your gut is usually right. I'm not saying become paranoid. I'm saying, if something feels genuinely off, not insecurity, not old baggage, but genuine, sustained, pattern-based wrongness, don't spend 8 months talking yourself out of it. Pay attention. Ask the question. If the answer is, why are you acting crazy? Said with a smile to your phone. That's your answer. That's the whole answer. You don't need a photo tagged publicly. You don't need a location ping from a bar. You don't need the admission in the kitchen. The smile was the tell. The smile was everything. I'm in a different place now. Literally and figuratively. My apartment has a good window that gets morning light. I make coffee there before work and read, or just sit. There's something to be said for quiet that belongs to you. For mornings that aren't complicated. For not waiting to see which version of someone shows up. I'm not closed. I'm not bitter. I'm just recalibrated. Clearer about what I need. And very certain about one thing. I will never again talk myself out of what I can see with my own eyes. She was smiling at her phone. I asked a simple question. She called me crazy. I took a screenshot. Sent it to myself. Walked away that night. And the truth came out when her friend tagged her publicly. Not with a bang. Not with a dramatic confrontation. Just a photo. A caption. A winking emoji in the 11th comment. And the entire architecture of 8 months of careful misdirection collapsed in the notification of a single Instagram post. The folder is still on my phone. I don't look at it. But I keep it. Not as evidence. Not as something to carry forward. Just as a reminder. That I wasn't crazy. That I saw it. That I knew. That I had the sense, even in the middle of it, to write it down and save it for the version of myself who would need proof. He needed it. I gave it to him. And he walked away.